Hey everybody, good morning. So in yesterday, if you've been keeping up, yesterday's morning for visionaries, I discussed how to survive the husband and wife dynamic of running a company. Well, that brought up a fun little idea and a topic that we had at one of our events a little while ago. It was, well, team communication. This is, of course, relevant to marriages and business in general, but this is specifically on how to foster positive team communications, which means what do you do in order to ensure that everybody in the team communicates consistently ish? They communicate well, which I will define in just a minute, and that when they communicate, hopefully in a positive manner, which encourages team growth. Now that's a whole lot to pack in. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we encourage a team dynamic where communication is encouraged, where they can talk openly and freely? Well, there are a few things. First and foremost, let's talk about technology. The consensus generally is technology doesn't matter. It only matters to the point where your team is happy with this technology and you're all able to use it and you all agree to use this technology. So it doesn't matter which platform you use, what systems you use, as long as you all agree upon it, you've all had a voice in it, and you all understand how to use it. And of course, hopefully, the management team and the leadership team encourages positive growth on these platforms. So technology aside, because again, technology doesn't matter as much, the question is, what do you as the team leader or the person in the team do to help encourage these things? One, well, there are three or four things depending how you look at all this. First and foremost is positivity. There is the general type of person in almost every team that likes to nag, is negative, doesn't generally have too many positive things to say, and that kind of sucks. So, what do you do about those people? Well, that's a different conversation. But what you can do personally is generally try to frame things in a positive light. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but there is a difference between, hey, your work sucks, and hey, I think we could try to improve this process that we were just working on. Or, hey, I saw you struggling. You maybe have been struggling on this one task. I'd love to help you and help you get better at it. So there is a difference in how you communicate these things by staying generally positive. Of course, there's going to be a time and a place to be negative and to I was about to say yell, but you probably don't want to yell for the most part. But there's a time and a place to be angry. Anger has a point and a purpose in life, and a very good purpose, and it can be used in positive ways. But in team communication in general, you do want to focus on being a generally helpful person, giving quality and properly constructive insights. And by the way, constructive insight is not, oh, hey, you have too much padding on these items, and you're always doing this horribly wrong, and I think your thing sucks. That is not constructive feedback. Constructive feedback is generally what we've seen in these designs is that the items could be aligned in such ways and generally encourages better focus on our content if we align it this way. So you help teach through your communication. Now that brings me to item number two is like teachers and in school that they have consistency in what they're teaching and their own style. You should probably go find your own style, though you should be consistent with your style. If you're a person who generally loves to communicate via email, generally keep it that way, and that's okay. But you should be crystal clear about it. If you're a phone person, okay, fine. Be generally that kind of phone person that calls everybody and asks them what they need. The thing is, though, about being on these types of platforms is not everybody's always going to love receiving a phone call. So that's where the team dynamic comes into play. If, for example, most of your team is a email team or a Slack team, then you'll probably be generally forced into that kind of environment. And that is okay if that's part of the team you went into and you've had your voice heard about what you prefer to do. You can also, by the way, in things like Slack, be a little bit more phone-like by communicating a little bit more, being a bit more open. Now, speaking of open, this is kind of number three, is you have to be clear on what you want. The example I love to give is if you're in the military and they say jump, what do? Well, you jump, right? The problem is, though, in general life and business, is if somebody gives you the equivalent of jump, well, you don't just jump. And of course, if you are going to follow their request, the question is not to jump. The question is to how high, for how long, why do you want me to jump? Is there a purpose of this jumping? So they're not being clear with their instructions of jump. So put it into some realistic context. A client gives you a request, and we all love this request. Make the logo bigger. Make the logo pop. Hey, can you make my website faster? Hey, can you fix this one issue? Well, that's not giving me context. That's not helping really move the conversation along. What you want to do is be crystal clear about what your intentions are, what you want them to do, and what you want to communicate. So, that being said, you don't always have to be rather pedantic. You don't have to always force everybody into a micromanage type detail situation, though you should make your intentions clear in such a way and your desires clear so that anybody reading, of course, and hopefully they have context for what they're reading, when they're reading this, they understand what needs to be done and what is being communicated in such a way that there hopefully are no ambiguous points in that communication. So be it, hey, can you get me that new logo? There's actually a reasonable request that I sent to Ari not too long ago. Hey, can you get me this new logo? Without context, that request doesn't really make sense. Am I talking about the logo for the brand lab? Am I talking about the logo for a client project? Hey, can you make, actually, let's talk about this little graphic right here. I asked Ari, hey, can you help me make a graphic for this thing? She said, for what thing? And so we had a little discussion to help clarify the context and to help discuss the point of what I was trying to do. So, one, you have to be rather clear on what you're doing. Two, you should be reasonably consistent on the platforms and the expectations. And three, and I think this is 3 or 4. I'll let's count. But the important thing is the last one is expectations. Expectations is a huge, huge, huge point of this. Now, in a team dynamic, it's not as much about using a specific platform as what's the expectation of using that platform. Are you expected to always use Asana? Are you always expected to be on Slack? Are you always expected to be on your phone 24/7 so the boss can call you up at 3 a.m. saying there's a server outage? What is the expectation of your communication of you, of your team members? That's not always just about how frequently you communicate, hence the consistency. It's also about what is the expected communication medium, what is or are your expected hours of replying, but also the quality of the reply that's expected, and also the expectation of what information you're going to send over. One of those ticketing tool thingies they have, some companies use, is when you fill out one of those support tickets, they ask you what kind of reply you want. Do you want a normal reply? Do you want a geeky reply? Do you want a generalistic reply, etc.? They ask that, but they also ask what's your mood. They're kind of trying to get some better answer. Because if you want a geeky reply and you're horribly panicked, they're going to give you one type of reply versus you want a normal reply and you're happy. So you have to set expectations. And this is where the big thing, before you start doing all this thing, you have to have a talk, really. You have to communicate with your team about what you expect, what they can expect, what they expect of you, what you expect of them, what you can expect of communication outside of the team, and more so. Point is, you all have to get on the same page about what's going to happen, what you expect to happen, what you need to happen, how often it's supposed to happen, all of these things. You need to talk to the team and have this cordial discussion about how you're going to proceed forward with things in life. So to have a quick overview of the tips today, let's go backwards. One, set expectations. It's kind of important. Make sure that everybody knows what's going to happen and how and all those fun things. Be consistent and know generally how you're going to communicate, and be positive in your overall communications and most of what you're going to tell people. So that's food for thought for today. And if you have any ideas on how to have positive team communication, leave it in the comments and we'll have a discussion and communicate about it. Bye.